Christians all over the world are about to enter into what is called Holy Week, one of the most sacred and holy weeks in the life of the Christian faith. I'm Tim Selby here at Heart of Steamboat, and we enter into this season on this Sunday, which is known as Palm Passion Sunday. We observe Palm Sunday when Jesus enters into Jerusalem to palm waving and much fanfare. But that story quickly turns to the passion of Jesus, which is his arrest, death, crucifixion, a very difficult part of the story. And today I want to focus really just on that passion side of this story. Behind me is the cross, and the cross is a graphic image of the pain and the anguish and the hardship and suffering that Jesus went through. The cross is an image of pain and blood and sweat and tears, denial, betrayal, hardship, all of it. And all of it is an image of what Jesus was willing to do as an extension of what he had taught all along through the years, as an extension of the way that he touched people, an extension of the way that he poured out his grace, of how he served, of how he lived with compassion. This is the extent that Jesus was willing to go to. This is what Jesus was willing to do. And we should ponder this and reflect on it and be shaped by it till the end of time. But a question I want to ask today is this what God required? Did God require this death? Did God require this blood, this suffering, this pain? Many of us have been taught this. We've been taught that the wages of sin is death, and therefore we are all sinful, and so we deserve to die. We deserve the pain. We deserve the suffering. We deserve the torment. Not only in this life, but in this notion of hell in the life to come. But if Jesus, the innocent one, takes our place, takes our punishment, takes our sin, takes our suffering, then we will be spared that fate, a fate really worse than the cross itself. Have you been taught this along the way? Many of us have. But I would think that if this is our theological framework, we don't find love in this story. We don't find grace in this story. We don't find compassion in this story. This is really not a story that reflects the nature and character of God as we have come to know it. The wages of sin is death. There are many things that were said to be the reason that people should be put to death. I want to read you a number of them from the Hebrew Scriptures. This is what the Scriptures say. If a man commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. A man or woman who is a medium shall surely be put to death. They shall be stoned with stones. Whoever blasphemes the name of the Lord shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him, the sojourner, the foreigner, as well as the native, when he blasphemes the name, shall be put to death. Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death. While the people of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him in custody because it had not been made clear what should be done to him. And the Lord said to Moses, "The man shall be put to death, and all the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." And all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him to death with stones. Watch out for those sticks. 6 days the work of the Lord shall be done, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath is a day of rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall be put to death. Whoever strikes a man so he dies shall be put to death. Anyone who curses his father and his mother shall surely be put to death. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and though they discipline him, will not listen to them, then his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders at the city gate of the place where he lives, and they shall say to the elders of the city, "This is our son. He is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice." Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death. This is not an exhaustive list. I could keep going on. There were many reasons for people to be put to death. And there is no doubt that among these ancient people was the idea that God commanded people to be put to death as punishment for their sins. But thankfully, we have grown out of that understanding of God. And this is not simply an Old Testament, New Testament kind of thing. Our friends in the Jewish community are not going around thinking that all these people should be put to death. And I also think it's clear that in the early Christian communities, there was the idea that Jesus had taken the punishment for our sin, paid the price, if you will, you've heard that phrase, which would have been completely understandable as they came out of a religious system in which the judgment of God to be put to death was the punishment for many things. And the ritual sacrifice that they engaged in, the spilling of the blood of animals, that was really an offering to God, a gift and an offering, a way to come into ritual communion to share a meal with God, was often mistaken for a method of appeasing the wrath of an angry God. And what a monstrous image of God this presents to us. Who among us would treat our children in such a way? Who among us would judge one another with such harshness? Because Adam and Eve ate the apple? Because we at times hurt one another? Because we become selfish and lose our way? I know that I would never pass a judgment on you, a judgment of pain, of suffering, of death, of torment. And I have a pretty good idea that my grace is not greater than God's. I would ask this question: has our understanding of who we are as human beings not grown in the last 2,000 years? Has our understanding of human life not grown? Has our understanding of the universe not grown? Has our understanding of the nature of God not grown in the last 2,000 years? Well, I certainly hope that it has. And one thing I hope that has grown is our understanding of one of the most defining moments of Christianity, this moment of Jesus on the cross. I would ask the question, is this punishment or is this proclamation? Is this the punishment required by an angry God or the ultimate proclamation of God's love and grace? Is this God saying Jesus has taken on the suffering and death for you, so now I don't have to kill you and make you suffer? Or is this the ultimate proclamation of God who through Jesus proclaims the fullness of the love and grace that God pours out upon us, that God has always had for us? Not a moment of appeasing an angry God, but the ultimate expression of God's love poured out. Isn't this what Jesus taught us all along? Even when his friends betrayed him, he still loved them. Even when his friends denied him, he still loved them. Even when people mocked him, nailed him to a cross, and strung him up to die, he still spoke words of love and grace upon them. You see, there was nothing they could do to get outside of God's love. Nowhere they could go to hide them from God's grace. It flowed out from that cross in all directions to every corner of the earth. With the opportunity for 2,000 years of reflection upon the life and death and resurrection of Jesus, I think it's abundantly clear that the scandal of the Gospels is always that God's grace is more abundant than we expect. Perhaps God's grace is more abundant than we can even imagine. Perhaps God's grace is more abundant than we sometimes think it even should be. God's love, grace, is crazy. It's inexplicable. It's clear to see. That is the proclamation of the cross of Christ. And I hope that in this season, when you in some way, shape, or form brush up against the cross, that you will feel the love, the power, the grace that flows out of it into your life. This love and grace that God has held for all of us for all time and for all time to come. May grace and peace be with you.